Hello, everyone. It is Monday, the 25th of September, 2023. And so much I can talk about. There's things that I don't want to talk about because these are intentional narratives and scripts that are played out intentionally to distract and divide us. And so it's frustrating. But in the news now within Canada, of course, I can't have this video without talking about a Ukrainian Nazi soldier that had two standing ovations within our parliament and standing ovations by the Speaker of the House, who invited him and who lied and said that he just acknowledged him. So I've messaged this guy like a couple of times in the last few days, the Speaker of the House. I'll talk about him in a bit, but other people as well, like Chrystia Freeland and Justin Trudeau. And again, these people know who these people are. And I've said this in previous videos, so I don't want to get down too much on this path for this video. But even within Europe, the majority of the neighboring surrounding countries were socialist, communist, in like their political ideologies, and who was representing them in government, right? And so even in Germany with Adolf Hitler, he went under and was representing a socialist minority government when he first got in, and then he aligned with the right. Right, there's only two parties, and this two-party system also needs to go. It's part of the way where we're duped into, this like misconception that there's a choice between these two parties, even though the left and right are both part of the same bird. I won't get into that, but I will say that the majority of Europe was communist socialist for many years, and so the biggest problem with so Viva Frey, who is a Canadian, he is now living in Florida, I believe, and he's someone that's essentially an independent journalist, is what I would call him, and he speaks more about the reality and the truth about the world than anyone in the mainstream media. Not as much as me, but he gets like again, he gets a lot of it right, and but still also reports like the intentionally distracting and divisive points like this. And so he did come up with a tweet yesterday that I really thought was good. And so the biggest problem with Justin Trudeau's Ukrainian Nazi soldier in Canadian Parliament gaffe is not that it's an embarrassment to Canada. It is. The biggest problem is that this gaffe has highlighted at the international level the known Nazi problem of Ukraine, and the media and lying politicians have been dishonestly telling us didn't exist since the war broke out, so as to maintain public support for the endless money laundering, which is in fact happening, and people have gotten fired for it and resigned in shame for receiving bribes and money laundering and taking money that even Canadians gave and lining their own pockets, not going to soldiers on the ground. And by the way, what's happening now? There's even like senior friggin' citizens and young people that are now being prepared for war in a country that we have no business supporting and assisting and enabling. Justin Trudeau has just embarrassed every country that has been unconditionally supporting Ukraine for as long as it takes. He has confirmed what we were told were lies. He has put at risk the laundering scheme that it was so profitable for everyone involved, and I suspect they are going to be pissed at him. Something tells me Justin Trudeau's political career is going to be in for a rocky road in the future. And then again, this is Viva Frey, like just so that was his take on that. And then someone else, Don Wilson. There's material discrepancy in the respective statements from the Speaker's office and the PMO. In Speaker Rhoda's statements, he only takes responsibility for recognizing an individual in the gallery and making certain remarks. He says nothing about inviting this person. The PMO statement says the Speaker of the House has apologized and accepted full responsibility for issuing the invitation. The PMO's press secretary has twice reposted the claim of Karina Gould, Gould MP, that the Speaker has now made it clear that he was responsible for inviting the individual to the House. Except that is not true. The Speaker has made no such apology, nor did he take responsibility for any such action. Read the statements for yourself, in which case I already said it. The Speaker of the House didn't even acknowledge the fact that he invited this person. And what I've been saying as well, like I've been sharing information to literally every friggin' cabinet member now for the last few years, like the Heritage Minister, like Minister of Education, like literally everyone, and giving like the information and trying to do a brief history of Europe. And even at Carleton University, who is also like being duped into thinking like what we're dealing with now is like a right-wing extremist, issue when it's more unfortunately on the left at this point in time, and also specifically being run and dictated by atheists as well, right? So since before, the most harm and murder that happens within civilizations happens by atheist, socialist, communists, and it's just a fact. And I've shared enough information about Stalin and Hitler and Mao and Lenin and you name it, right? And if you actually want to look at the excess deaths in Canada just as the pandemic alone, Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland on that friggin' list too, by the way. Don't even get me started on that. And that's why people need to peacefully speak out in a peaceful, logical, coherent way. I know it's hard sometimes because these people are just so infuriating. But even with the Speaker of the House, like he was making remarks about like Zelensky, like his excellency and all this stuff when this guy wouldn't even make it past like the first week of boot camp, and neither would the House of Commons Speaker. And so again, just calling this stuff out. Zelensky is a corrupt, lying actor that is giving most of our money to already rich corporatists. No one died on Snake Island. I knew that and shared the proof immediately. Ukraine spokesperson was fired for lying about Russia. Ukraine murdered Polish farmers. NATO blew up Nord Stream 2 and more. Most Canadians with common sense know this. This is why the government is not trusted right now. I've served Canada for over 20 years, 15 as an infantry officer, and cannot believe who you have speaking in our parliament. I said that Friday at 6:20 a.m. And then look who they had in, like even after that, like they had a Ukrainian Nazi. And so if anyone thinks that that there's such a misconception like all the Nazis come from Germany, when again most of the crimes and atrocities and deaths were incurred in Ukraine, Poland, Hungary, in these areas. People are so friggin' ignorant, and it's so frustrating. Like it's just so frustrating. Stupid people. Oh my god. Oh my god. And again, a distraction because people are coming out now more and more with like with proof of this stuff, speaking out on this. And even Marco Menencino, who was able to resign and still not being investigated, his wife, of course, not him, because they want to have like a little bit of a disconnect, like a separation from the, like when they get audited, that like she had shares and probably still does in stocks in Northrop Grumman. And I've shared this before, which is like the biggest weapons dealer in like working with Ukraine. And so these people are literally profiting off of these wars. People are literally dying overseas, including people I've shared personally that have gone in multiple different capacities and being duped to do it. And it's not like by speaking out on things like 9/11 being staged and planned to get us into wars, and then also wars that were funded and initiated by people within government, including CIA, like internationally, that that was like profiting already rich corporatists, and I'm talking about like drug cartels being involved in human trafficking as well. I highly recommend people take a look at Armageddon. Amadeus, Watchtower, and Pegasus. And so before I go on these tangents, maybe I'll just present some of this stuff just to show you that you can't always trust people within government. You should be able to trust your governing body, because again, people like me being of service, like we're on the right side of history. Dr. Jordan Peterson on the right side of history, and people like Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland not so much. And then you've got examples of people too throughout, like even like the last several decades, where there have been people within government that have exploited countries and even involved them in wars because of drug cartels being like and again the money laundering stuff. So this is Amadeus PDF from Cryptome. Actually, I don't know. I just want to make sure that you can see this. Yes, you can. Okay, so there's so much to look through. So this is talking about Senator Joe McCarthy accidentally stumbled onto Amadeus, by conversation with I was trying anyway. Let me just see if I can. But this is all testimony within government. Talk about like people within government organizations that were profiting from wars and then laundering money and drug cartels and stuff like that. Like, look at this stuff. Flow chart. CIA drugs operate target people of color. Like, I know this is like hard to hear. With drug mind control operations, CIA operations, Paperclip that involved Nazi virologist Eric Traub created microbugs for depopulation. Like, that's all like there's more. And anyway, this is all like open source if you know how to look for it. So I'll go into more stuff too because there's Watchtower, there's Pegasus. This is all this is all open source. Let me see if I can get another one open here. I'm just going from a secured browser, and then I'm just shifting it into. I have a lot more information on this in on Discord and on Rumble, not on Rumble, Discord and Signal and Telegram. And oh, I don't know what I just did. I hope I'm still on Rumble. Anyway, distracted. So like heads of government, people that you might even be familiar with already, like Ralph Nader. That's not what I wanted to show you. But that is again, there's also like a lot of propaganda like online. I've shared this before on the left and right in order to intentionally discredit people. Is this it? And I'll just go back on stream just to see that. There we go. Okay. Inspector General, Department of Defense, Defense Criminal Investigative Services, Syracuse. And look, again, this is regarding Operation Flicker. You can look at the date here. There's quite a bit of information redacted. So you can read it for yourself. Let me just see if there's anything here. So this is about prawn stuff that I can't really get into. So I had anyway, let me see what I can pull up. I had some good content that I shared on like the people yesterday, and sometimes I just bury it, like it just. Okay, it says access denied, and that's anyway I can get rerouted anyway. But so it's just regarding. I'll just show you what Wikipedia says, but again, don't. Wikipedia is not exactly like a reputable source that you should be citing for scientific research and papers and stuff like that. But sometimes like there's good information, like just gives you like a general like idea. And so just got to go back to stream and just make sure, okay, you can see it. Okay, so this is just regarding like, again, like I've been talking about, like you had Watchtower, Pegasus, and Amadeus. I would highly recommend people take a look on a VPN for yourself. So this was where the CIA has been accused of involvement in drug trafficking. And you can take a look at these people and books that they've read, forming alliances of convenience with drug traffickers around the world in the name of anti-communism since its creation in 1947. In the early 1970s, Alfred McCoy accused American officials of condoning and even cooperating with corrupt elements in Southeast Asia's illegal drug trade out of political and military considerations, and stated that the CIA was knowingly involved in the production of heroin in the Golden Triangle of Burma, Thailand, and Laos. And there's so much more, but this was like international, right? And so it's very interesting stuff. So now I will get into, let me see, I was going to get into a few other things here. I was talking this morning to some people from my my regiment, my whole regiment, the PPCLI, and good conversations. And just because I've been sharing videos also on LinkedIn and other sites, and people again, like look at the titles, or they just dismiss it because like they think that I'm this this conspiracy theorist, stuff like that, and I get it, but it's because what I'm saying goes against what the majority of people, especially in the Canadian Armed Forces, are I guess believing right now, or whatever you want to call it. And so in the conversation that came up, I was just saying that, yeah, like, you know, because of my vaccine status and the mandates here, like a lot of my work contracts where I was like working with the highest levels of government, essentially, like I was completely like outcast and even vilified and character assassinated at the lowest levels for not being vaccinated for this therapeutic. Even though if you look at my immunization booklet, like it's a freaking like a freaking pincushion almost. But it is what it is, and so I was even saying that I could have done work even with Jordan Peterson's security detail, but because of my vaccination status, I wouldn't have been able to travel. So this had nothing to do with him and what he was imposing on his people at all. This had to do with like the Canadian policies, right? So that, like, there's no one that was able to go around that, unfortunately, and because again, like this was like international like governments that were imposing these restrictions during these times as well. So I get it. It's just that I wasn't going to do it, and what I was and not hold the line, and yeah, because I was looking at the repercussions. So like the more people like held the line and allowed for more research to get out there about the original trials and like a lot of the adverse events and poor outcomes within children. Like even within like luckily after a while of a pushback, children luckily were able to get away with getting 1/3 the dose of adults, which I do believe is what's caused like a lot of less adverse reactions within children since the rollout within Canada, because yeah, it became approved, and then all of a sudden within days of the approvals, the new Omicron variant came out, which was more contagious but like less virulent. Anyway, it's just frustrating, and my thoughts to that is like again, people were contracting this respiratory virus through the inoculation itself and then spreading depending on your own individual health. So moving on from that, I wanted to get into HARP. Actually, no, before I get into that, just because I'm talking about vaccines and stuff like that, I'll get into what's going on in Canada right now, because the trials with Tamara Leach are still ongoing. And there are people within the Canadian Armed Forces that were suing the government to change policies and mandate protocols and stuff like that at the very least. And it got pushed out of courts yet again because we have a BS. Oh my God. I don't even want to get into it. I'm just going to share.
And we're also interviewing 2 members that were released from the forces dishonorably after having very successful careers. You're also going to learn about some explosive allegations that are coming out of this lawsuit that I think you're really going to want to hear. So stay tuned, keep yourselves dialed in, and see you on the other side. Welcome, folks, to another episode of the Hard to Kill podcast. I'm sitting here once again with barrister Catherine Christensen from Valor Law. We've also got 2 guests here today. We've got Caroline Ouellette and Serge Fauché, both members of the CAF and plaintiffs in the mass tort against the Canadian Armed Forces for abuse of power during the COVID-19 mandate era. So, Catherine, welcome again to the podcast. We've got lots of updates since the last time we chatted. So let's start right there. What's new with relationship to the case, and how is it proceeding right now?
Okay, so we finally got served with a statement of defense by the Crown, and I was a little disappointed, to be honest with you, because it's cut and paste of other defenses I've seen. There's nothing original in it, and basically they're saying that the CAF has done nothing wrong, and that everyone should just withdraw because we are vexatious and slanderous and every little name they can come up with.
I like that word, vexatious. I read that. I was like, ooh, yeah, vexatious. It means they're getting vexed. And so that in Canadian law, getting vexed is a reason to dismiss something. Like, I'm upset that you brought this up.
Well, apparently we've upset the Chief of Defense Staff as well. Like, we've hurt his feelings. Anyway, what they've done basically is open the door for me to come back in my reply, which will be filed next week, to kick the door open, because they basically, by saying they did nothing wrong, and now leaves me free to say, oh yes, you did.
The Chief of Defense Staff is Wayne Eyre, E-Y-R-E, and I've even written videos saying that he sold Canada out and that he should be investigated, and that even I personally gave him multiple scientific, medical, and government data sets that right from the beginning, like even within our like even internal memorandums from Kieran Moore about the masks, and no acknowledgement, even though like he had the information and like people in his team had the information, they refused to look at it. And I'll just go on, written memorandums, like even by legal teams, like people that were brave enough to actually like legally represent people that were on the right side of history in this case, unfortunately. Just
did, and here's where you did it wrong. One of the big ones that popped for me was when they said there was absolutely no privacy breaches. I'm like, holy cow, I've got them on so many privacy breaches. I have a paralegal who used to work for the privacy commissioner. So when they say there's no privacy breaches, that paralegal's reaction was, what?
So Catherine, like I read that initial statement as well. And obviously I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how the justice system works. Is it just kind of the typical way forward for the Crown to say, like, we need to get this dismissed right off the bat? So that was expected, but then it does come down to a judge to say, well, hold on a sec, Valor Legal is making a very solid point. We need to hear this out in court. Is that kind of how this goes down when statements of defense are made?
Right. So the Crown's default position on every single case I've ever seen brought against the Crown is there's no merit to this case, right, and we're going to get it dismissed, and we're going to get big costs against you. So it's sort of a threat of withdraw this action now, or it's going to cost you later.
Or will cost you.
Yeah. And so do I take it seriously? No. The other thing is that they do have to convince a judge of that. And they usually lose, because we've got 30 claims. I just have to prove one of them is worth the merit to proceed. And as I was just commenting on the privacy breaches alone, I've got them on several counts of that they can't save themselves on.
To expand on that, Catherine, just a little bit, we're talking about within the CAF members' medical records being shared without their consent. Is that what we're talking about here?
So I'll give you a few examples. One was everyone was required to put their vaccination status into Monitor Mass, which was protected A information. So everyone's vaccination status could be seen by anyone. There was no security for that. That's medical information. That's not allowed to be disclosed. And when you open Monitor Mass, it outlines what the information is being collected for, but at no point does it say that the information collected there is going to be used against the member for remedial measures. They missed a spot. So that's one thing. The other part is I have an affidavit from a senior officer who was stationed in Ottawa at HQ, and they had a website that listed every single member's vaccination status that was accessible to the public if you wanted to look at it.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. And I had heard, and on the third thing, I had heard rumors of this. I now have a medic who is providing an affidavit. In Edmonton, they gave 1,000 people's medical files to members who had no business looking at anything in a medical file to make up vaccination cards. And they weren't just looking at their vaccination status. So if someone had mental health issues, had sexually transmitted diseases, had been treated for anything, or their family, that was exposed for 1,000 people at CFB Edmonton. That's a major privacy breach.
Huge privacy breach, and so much information that people have no business having access to. And look at these people's security clearances and things like that as well. Like out of these 1,000 people, and if they even had above enhanced or above secret.
Another one, I have a young female corporal. Her medical information regarding her pregnancy loss was posted in Monitor Mass, and she informed them that information should not be accessible to anyone. And they said, oh yeah, that's terrible. And then the next day she had someone from a different unit check, and they could access that information, all of that personal gynecology information. So now tell me there's no privacy breaches, Mr. Beckendorf. So
having been in, there's a lot of mistakes that are made, but at scale like this, it's probably hard to justify that, we just made a massive nationwide error with respect to people's vaccination statuses and making them quote unquote publicly available to people. The fact that there's a website, that's kind of blowing my mind a little bit. And if I understand correctly, the website was, and maybe you can answer this because you might not know the individual's intent, but if I understand correctly, it was put up there to expose people that would not get vaccinated, or to show, this is how many people are doing it. So everybody that's not, like, shame on you. I'm like, what would be the intent of putting a website up like that?
Well, it was part of the bullying and the pressure that they were putting on people who wouldn't get vaccinated, is my impression of it. Okay. It should never have existed. I mean, I'm talking to three people who have been in the service. You know that all your commanding officer was ever entitled to know is whether you dagged green, yellow, or red.
Yeah,
They
and
were
rightly
entitled to
so.
know. Yeah,
And
they
rightly
didn't know
so.
why.
Why
You know
would I,
it-
like as a commanding officer, why would I want to know all your personal details? Because now I'm like,
Exactly.
no, are you
Yeah.
fit to fight?
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. You know, are you dagging red because you haven't had your dental appointment yet?
Right.
You know, I mean, it could be as simple as that. So that they threw all of that out the window, and major privacy breaches that they cannot recover from in a legal sense.
And
So
like
that's just one.
that's just one. And yeah, there's numerous things, and I believe it's is it already public on the Government Canada website, or is that soon to follow?
The statement of defense is not yet because I haven't received a filed copy to know whether it's available online for that. The other side of this, of course, is that there's several hundred more coming in a second mass tort for the same thing.
Oh boy.
We call it Op
Okay.
Valor 2.0.
Okay. And this is all through your nonprofit Valor Legal Foundation.
Yes.
So are there other, so people have been reaching out to me, and so I sent them the links to your site, what you're just talking about here, the second claim. But I imagine there's likely other law firms that are probably picking up what's going on here. Is this something that you think is snowballing now with respect to the CAF and then maybe the public service? Could you speak to that if you can?
Yeah, there might be someone out there trying to do the military one. I doubt it because we're up against the statute of limitations here. In early October, it's 2 years since the first directive. And if they're going to do what I'm doing, they have to tie it to the directive. So that's a really short timeline unless they're already in the works of doing it. But I have been in touch with lawyers who intend to pursue cases similar to mine for public service employees and RCMP, and in particular, public service employees who work for D&D.
Because I'll reiterate, it wasn't just people within the military that I was working with, sharing data with people that got kicked out, even pregnant with 20 years of service as an Army officer. Like, it's just gross. And the fact that she would have been high, like she was high risk for her first pregnancy, being around my age, you know what I mean? And still getting kicked out with the 5F, essentially like it might as well have been like dishonorable discharge, and because they don't recognize it as such. And but also there were people that were like even firefighters, RCMP was already mentioned, law enforcement, like even within the Ottawa Police Services, provincial police and Ottawa Police Services, and people that were covert law enforcement, people that were working with SACA, and just vilified and just just you name it, and investigated as being like right-wing conspiracy theorist enablers and all this other shit. And it was infuriating because it's got like, look at the science, look at the facts, look at the medical data, look at the original trials, look at all of that stuff before you come at people, right, at a very minimum. And yeah, I could go on all these friggin' tangents.
Because they're under the same chain of command structure as members. So
all right. I'll probably have to reach out at some point. All right. Thanks for the update, Catherine. Much appreciated. So let's now move over to Carolyn. So Carolyn, you're a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, and you were subjected to some treatment that, dare I say, was unsatisfactory. So let's get into your story a little bit. What was your background? How was your career? And then what led you to now being here on the podcast chatting about what happened to you during the COVID mandate era?
Hi. So I served overall for 13 years in the Canadian Armed Forces. My position towards the vaccine when the mandate came in was interesting because I was just recovering from a disease that I had. So just to make a story short, 2 years before the mandate, I was probably among the most fit women in the Canadian Armed Forces. I was on the search and rescue course, which was very intense, and I became very sick and diagnosed with some rheumatoid arthritis, and I was on medication. Medication was pretty bad. Within 3 months, I had lost my hair. It was changing some symptoms, but giving me other side effects. And after realizing that I couldn't continue the SARTEC, I stopped the medication and decided to heal on my own.
So this guy might get into it. I've already watched this video, but SARTEC is search and rescue operations. So just like that's also like another like environment which is like primarily male dominated and environment. Just like me being in the infantry, I was the first in my regiment, for example, and you have to be high level of fitness to be in these positions, and then also like a high level of education or intellect, because of like all the like, because it's a very complicated job as well. And like even with StarTex, there's just like a lot of stuff that you need to know and physically do in order to be successful at these jobs, and lives are at stake here. So it's very, very important. And so it's interesting with her story too, because she's someone that was also someone that was willing to like get whatever vaccines people wanted in order to be of service to Canada. But then when you start taking a look at the data, and so for me, it was like I was on the mefloquine mask tour for 4 years before the pandemic came out here internationally, and I was looking at adverse side effects, and I was looking at products that were approved within Canada by experts, and that were banned in other countries because of all the adverse side effects and just mind blowing stuff. And then taking a look at other therapeutics and inoculations throughout the last for a very long time, and then getting into the weeds of stuff, and then getting on a point where we need to address this and make sure that there's policies in place that soldiers like this don't go through this stuff, because it's more common than people are being led to believe. And there are people that are in the military, like medics and stuff like that, and nursing staff, unfortunately, that are intentionally covering this stuff up. And I have proof that they and I know other people as well that I won't name them right now, that they were impacted by the mass inoculations, and so were their people within their own family too, like a brother as well, permanently disabled upon just joining the Canadian Armed Forces, to the point where like he was not able to serve, so he was like discharged, and this other person luckily was able to serve for a very, very long period of time, but then ultimately ended up having adverse, anyway, health issues and decline and stuff like that later on in life that led to his release. But it is what it is.
Home. So it took me more than a year to heal, and so it was very hard because it's a thing to get physical injury, but when you're sick because of your own body, when you're a healthy person for decades, it's very hard to have your own body attacking yourself and not knowing why. So it was a very long healing curve and very challenging. And just before the mandates came in, I was actually telling myself, wow, I'm finally feeling back to where I was before being sick. So it was almost 2 years. And so the mandates came in, and so it was a experimental vaccine at this point. So I was not ready to try, and I asked for medical deferral or exemption, but there's basically no medical exemption. So if you have a disease or illness, you can't really ask for medical exemption. So you can get medical deferral if you have a vaccine injury, and it will give you a few more months, and then you will still need to get the vaccine. So there was nothing that I could get on this side, and I was really polite. I was honest. I shared my status and everything, but there was nothing to do. So it was just force. So I stood, and I was released 5F because I refused to take the vaccine.
Oh,
okay. So you were one of Canada's fittest, hardest core soldiers, because the StarTex, for those of you who don't know, search and rescue, you get to wear the orange jumpsuit. It is cool when being important. You get to see the most elite human beings on the planet.
And and this might sound sexist, I don't care, but like as a woman to give 13 years and then like be a SARTech, like that's a lot. That's a lot, right? Like even me with like in the infantry for 15 years, that's a long time for a woman, right? Especially when she only has a certain amount of time in her life where she can procreate and have a family and stuff like that, right? And it's like people like being of service first, like the mission man self piece, and then just kicked out like that.
So you were part of that group. You were working towards that group. So just getting into that level means you're a cut above. That's awesome. And you are obviously very dialed into your own personal health. And like you said, you had something chronic that was happening, autoimmune, whatever you want to call it. And that made you hyper aware of your own health, and therefore didn't want to take on something that could potentially do some damage. And you figured, hey, you know what? The Canadian Armed Forces been good since the start. They're going to understand. They're not going to do anything drastic. They're going to have my back. They understand that I've been sick. But from what it sounds like, they just let you down. And could you explain how that experience was? Was it kind of like a complete reversal with your chain of command and your friends that were in the Canadian Forces? Did they turn their back on you? Were they, aggressive in their stance? And if you could explain that a little bit better, that'd be great.
So it totally felt like a treason, because I'm one of those people in the military who was super motivated to do anything for my country, for doing my job. I was ready to do anything. And within the Sartec trade, it's a very difficult and risky trade. And I was ready to do everything to do this job and to save other people's life. So it felt like a big betrayal from.
And I know I keep on cutting her off and stuff like that. And because everyone says this, oh, well, if she was willing to do anything, then why wouldn't she get vaccinated? Because like she was saying, she was high risk of having a possible adverse reaction to it. And she was just recovering from illnesses, right? Like immune issues and stuff like that. So these are valid concerns. And she can't be of service and risk her life and be out there with people if she's not physically able to. All right. Okay. So like let's bring some common sense into this as well, right? And it's the same point for me as well. People are like, oh, like if you wanted to like go and like and travel and go and assist, in like on the ground, like all you had to do was just get vaccinated and just like, okay. However, like there's just so much to it when on a regular base. First of all, the your response to the therapeutic, it's vaccine or therapeutic related, and it's also dependent, and it's host dependent, right? So like how you respond to any form of like virus or disease or something being put into your body, like your own individual health matters, and then what it is actually that's being put into your body, right? So you'll have a different response from a flu shot than you would with silicone injections, for example. And then you've got like the intramuscular versus the intracellular and all these other things as well that you have to take into consideration. And so my point was, like, there are people that on a regular basis are working out, they're filtering their water, they're eating healthy food, like they're not drinking, they're not like smoke pot, you know what I mean? But like they're not like not on prescription medications and things like that, and they're more concerned about their overall health than the average citizen, right? So we're not the type of people that if you give us like that even if we contracted COVID, that we would not respond in a negative way to it. And if you look at the stats, then it's there, right? And so don't come at me with these like red herrings or these like rare instances where like a likely comorbid condition wasn't addressed or discussed. I'm going on these tangents.
My country to be coerced into that, and there was no possibility of like it was I get the vaccine or I'm out. There's no other possibility. I was lucky because my coworkers were understanding, but at the same time, I couldn't see them. I was at home. I had to work from home during a couple of months during the process. I couldn't go on base. I had to do the self-test. I had to. It was a very stupid process. And I didn't know anybody until I got in touch with the other people from the lawsuit. But I was alone, and it was.
And then people are like, "Oh, what's the big deal? You were alone, for a few months or for like all the lockdowns. Like even within like a relatively short period of time, people that are isolated, there could be a mental decline, cognitive decline. Like you don't have that support network with you. Like there's like that. Like and then there's the isolation aspect of that as well. And then like the feelings of like shame and guilt and ostracized, like all of that stuff that goes along with it. And it's a lot to deal with, right? And and there was an increase in addictions, increase in suicides, acute conditions became chronic and stuff like that. And what these people were subjugated to, it blew my mind because I was showing even in the original studies, I've shared this multiple times, 4.6% of people within the original studies contracted COVID through the friggin' jabs, right? And then you spread it. Okay. So not only did like everyone knew at the beginning, everyone knew that not only did it not stop you from getting COVID, but it also you possibly got it through the therapeutic and then had more like likelihood of spreading it. Okay. And so that alone should have been enough to halt this immediately. It
was hard after so many years in military. It was hard to be on my own and to go through this process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that seems to be the common thread. You said it was like a treason. Like it was something where you never thought you'd be subjected to this type of treatment from your own chain of command, from your own friends, like the CAF family as it's sold, and to do, like you said, a stupid process. Because this is the thing that I struggle with. People like yourself that are trained to be a SAR tech, it is really important that you think for yourself. You have to make split-second decisions. You can't just follow and blindly go into things without having a very objective and very critical way of thinking. Yet the CAF went ahead and talked to individuals like yourself, like you were an idiot, that all these things somehow were meant to make sense for you, and they just tried to gaslight you and others into believing that, no, this is the only way forward. This is the only way to stay healthy. This is the only way to keep our fighting force free of disease and being able to fight. The justification of it didn't make any sense to me. So thanks for sharing that. I'll get back to you. And I want to talk to Serge now. So Serge, obviously you're a CAF member as well, and your experience is going to be interesting to share as well. So why don't we start with the same thing? What was your journey like throughout the CAF, and what brought you to this point where now you're part of a mass tort?
Thanks, Dave, for having us on your show. Just to clarify, I did retire in November 2021 with 34 years in the reg force, followed with 6 years in the reserves.
Wow.
I had been, first of all, I joined in
I was born in 81.
I'm one of the oldest guy in this group, 800 plus people. Yeah, I'm 59 right now, so yes. And anyhow, so I joined as a private. I became an avionics technician, and then eventually IS tech, then eventually avionics. At the rank of sergeant, I was offered a commission to aerospace engineering. I took it, and then from 2004 until I retired, I served as an area officer, and then I was posted all over the place. I did the first Gulf War as a master corporal. I did Afghanistan as a captain, and part of my big, I was like Caroline, super shape.
Wow.
In my case, track and field athlete. Been to 7 world championships for the masters athletes. I got medals. I got the Canadian records. I got 2 world records. 399 on my last force test before I retired. If you know what that means, you know. Yeah, if you know, you know. Anyhow, so when I saw this whole COVID thing come down in 2020, didn't pay too much attention to it. The big cold, blah blah blah. Okay, carry on. And then we roll into 2021. At that point, I'm working for the Fighter Capability Office in Ottawa for the acquisition of the future fighter. I'm basically just pushing paper and writing reports and stuff. Great. I had a good chain of command, no issues there. All is good. And then we're forced to work from home, as you remember. And then so I'm doing all my stuff. I'm here, no issues. Then in January, February that year, my career managers called me at home. Oh, we really want to promote you, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to put you on. I would like you to go on JCSP, the 1-year leadership course so I could get promoted from major to lieutenant colonel. And so I finally accepted that, turned it down before. I was just happy to do my job in headquarters and do all that stuff. I said, you know what, I'm working from home. I got more time. I can spare 2 or 3 hours a day extra and do all the studying. So I say yes, I get in the course. There's a free course in the summer. And then the course starts, I think it was late August or September. I can't remember exactly the dates of 2021. And then October, we get the first directives from the CDS. And then at that point, it was very clear, first of all, that we were going to put on leave without pay, which I found out not too long after that was a bogus tactic to scare people into getting vaccinated, which in the end worked on quite a scale, actually, with a lot of people, because they were afraid to lose their jobs, especially if you're a young corporal in Bagotville, let's say, and you got a family and you got kids to raise, you can't afford to lose your job. So a lot of people fell for it. And also embedded in that first directive, there was something about being on a career course, which I was on. And let's go back to earlier in 2021. They were talking about vaccines and all that. I was on to this pretty early because when we were forced to take that course on DLN, on the Defense Learning Network, we had to watch a movie and watch a PowerPoint and all that. The amount of propaganda and lies embedded in there was staggering. It was staggering. And to me, the red flags were popping like crazy. And so right away, I became very skeptical. And then as the year progressed, then the first directives comes out. I go, oh, okay, this is where they're going. I had plans to serve until 60 minimum. I said, you know what? I was excited. Like the career manager had told me at the time, she goes, there's no opportunity. They were ramping up 3 Canadian Air Div, which is basically our Space Force. And so I said, you know what? Maybe I'll.
And by the way, I hope you can hear, like, my neighbor just started mowing his lawn. Yeah, it's like 6 days in a row, people have been mowing their lawns in the area, and it blows my mind because there's only 3 houses here. Oh, I'm trying to keep on getting my videos out like around it, but it's just there's no way around it. And these videos are too important to delay. And so I hope you can hear that. I was so distracted by it, like I forgot what I was going to say. So this is what I mean. It's just a lot. It's very loud too.
I made some calls, made some inquiries. There were positions and so on. I said, you know what? Maybe that'll be a new start for an old dog like myself. You know, they're new tricks. And then I was kind of pumped to do this. And then directives came. And then I talked to my wife and I said, you know what? I cannot.
I wonder if it has anything to do with the fact that this person works for government and really like drinking the whatever you want to call it, drinking the woke narrative and pushing it, and knows that I do videos online, and so I often think that this is possible sabotage by a woke leftist supporter in the government.
No longer serve in the South.
Who should be at work right now
When they're pushing a psychological operation on us. And if you want to know more about psychological operations, just get the book 5GW from General Flynn, and it'll tell you everything you need to know. And the forces ran a really nice one on us. Anyhow, and so basically they wanted to keep me for another 6 months, because when you put in your release, they say, oh, please stay for 30 days. I said, I can't serve in this outfit anymore. So I put in my release and I was out in 30 days. My chain of command did not oppose me at all. I told them in very black and white terms that there's absolutely no way I was taking the vaccine, and I was not going to follow those government mandates. And
he's also boosted, and yeah, so like literally, unfortunately, it is what it is. We're just not on the same page with anything.
He said, we understand, and that was that. So I left quite bitter, because I wanted to serve at least 3 more years at a time, possibly more. I've in headquarters, I was with guys that were serving until they're 65. So in my case, again, there's just too much.
That you did everything we asked you to do. You sacrificed the body in Afghanistan, you lost friends, you got injured. But now this one thing, you're a unwanted member. I can't imagine the toll that would take, and the moral injury is essentially.
Absolutely. The moral injury is incalculable. There is no.
She's a lawyer. I don't know if you look at it.
Recovering from that. There's no receiving damages for that because it affected everyone. And I would even suggest that it's affected the people who supported the Canadian Armed Forces from the outside for civilians, because I have been a big supporter of the Canadian Armed Forces, for example. And now it's sort of like, do I really want to keep supporting as a civilian? You know, because as a lawyer, I get approached by all kinds of charities, et cetera, wanting support, and in particular military charities, because of what I do. And I'm like, you know, but the other piece that's added to this moral injury, because 2 years ago, when people first approached me, part of what they wanted was to be able to keep their jobs or go back to their job that they'd been released. Right. And now they're like, absolutely not. I have no interest in serving with the forces at all. And yet yesterday, it came to be that anyone who was released 5F for COVID-19 is now welcome with open arms back to the Canadian Armed Forces.
Really?
Now, 2 years ago, they were garbage. Today, oh, come on back. Everything's forgiven.
It's like a really bad toxic marriage.
Yeah. It's like being gaslighted by a narcissist at the most extreme level.
Oh my God. I can't believe they had the audacity to even go back and say that.
So yeah, there's a lot going on. And like, I don't want this video to go too long, because that's just distracting outside right now. I did want to share HARP stuff, because like that's also very, very important and interesting. I really hope that you can hear this and not distracted by that.
In 1993, the FAA started warning pilots to stay away from a certain section of airspace over Alaska.
because this involves like the military and the impact that the mandates had on a lot of people from the Canadian Armed Forces that were operator types, like really, really good individuals. It's really crippled our like our whole Canadian Armed Forces. Like there's a lot of people that were released. There's a lot of people that got kicked out. That got kicked out. There are sorry, it's just so distracting. Like the whole woke narrative too, like has made it where there's even people that you can get you can serve and not even do a fitness test, and there's so much more. But what I'm trying to say is our military has now been further weakened in the last couple of years under Wayne Eyre, and like we don't have the capacity to be fighting a war that we shouldn't even be in, and when we should be reconstituting and trying to build back our defenses and our operational capabilities, and do a lot more training and be like more ready and able to fight in actual wars that we should be involved in, if it came down to it, and or at the very least be able to defend our own borders and protect our own citizens, and we're not currently able to do that, right? So the more we overexhaust our resources and put ourselves in wars that we shouldn't even be in, this is also escalating tensions with other countries, which is why this may or may not be a world war, right? So when you have BRICS, okay, so it's not just Russia, right? It's China, it's India, it's Brazil, it's South Africa, and it's Saudi Arabia. It's so many other countries are not agreeing with what NATO has been doing in the last couple of years, especially. And so it's not just going to be like a response from just like one country, and it's so ignorant to think that. And again, to like needlessly and carelessly involve us is just mind blowing, because this is profiting just like people that are sitting in cabinet right now, including Pierre Poilievre, unfortunately, who just put a statement out about supporting the Ukrainian war. So let me just get this out. Response to President Zelensky's speech to Parliament. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is illegal and immoral. Russian President Vladimir Putin has violated every one of the West's shared democratic principles, and the world must respond with strength. Rhetoric and virtue signaling are not enough. We must take concrete action to support President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people as they fight for their freedom. Prior to 2016, under the leadership of Prime Minister Stephen Harper, we made support for Ukraine a cornerstone of Canada's foreign policy. We responded forcefully in the face of Russia's annexation of Crimea and worked to exclude Putin from the G8. So I don't even want to go on. It's just like it's very ignorant and misleading information that is that's going to further involve us into a war that we have no business being in. And even with like the staged coup that NATO was involved in 2015 in Ukraine, that was something that was not legal, right? And it was the government against the people, unfortunately. And in Ukraine, I've shared this before too, but there's been like political prisoners, there's been religious prisoners. We have no, and again, like these people have money and shares in companies that are directly profiting from the war, and so it's just unethical. It's criminal. It blows my mind that we're allowing this to happen and risking our men and women from Canada. For these people, again, this is not profiting anyone in Canada, and this is going to cause us to have more of a debt, right? Because with more like soldiers like dying, like there's more mental health issues. There's more like a requirement to have to replace them, and more training and funds being put into other people, and then again with the impact from other people that may have like served and known those people that passed away, like dealing with like lifelong addictions and or like prescription medications or like mental health conditions that again are costly, and it costs taxpayers money, right? And it should, like these are like areas that we should be putting our funds, but we don't want to have more of a sick care system because of this as well. This is all very short-sighted. And again, just because we don't involve ourselves into this one war, it doesn't mean that like we don't have a meaningful military at all. Because like again, there's a staged and planned like fake alien invasion that's coming down the pipe, and more. So like we're not even remotely ready for that. So anyway, it's just frustrating. I digress.
Alaska. The U.S. government was experimenting with a new breed of high-altitude electronic technology. It was significantly altering the Alaskan airspace. The experiments continue to this day, and critics are warning that this project could have global effects that will destroy our planet.
In Alaska, the rugged, pristine wilderness is timeless.
most of it remaining just as it has for thousands of years. In the midst of all this natural beauty, just outside the small town of Gakona, stands an enormous and seemingly harmless antenna farm. It is a $100 million Air Force project known as HARP, and critics of the soon-to-be completed facility charge it just may turn out to be the ultimate doomsday machine.
It's got all the marks of Dr. Strangelove on it.
HARP is an acronym for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. According to program manager John Hesher, HARP is a research facility designed to study the ionosphere.
All the military have communications, surveillance, navigation systems whose paths either traverse the ionosphere or reflect from it. And so we need to be very careful about what we know about it and how we study it. What we're interested in is what is the effect of a large input of energy on the ionosphere.
The ionosphere is the outermost layer of the Earth's atmosphere. It is part of an electromagnetic field that keeps out harmful solar and cosmic radiation. One visible effect of the sun's rays hitting the ionosphere is the aurora borealis, known as the northern lights. The ionosphere also plays a vital role in worldwide radio communication.
The first transmission of radio waves across the ocean were quite a surprise when it was first done. People thought there'd be no chance to transmit the signals across the ocean by wireless. And in fact, what the ionosphere does is act like a mirror. And so you transmit a signal and it bounces off the ionosphere and then it bounces off the Earth.
When HARP is fully operational, it will transmit extremely powerful blasts of high-frequency radio waves directly up into the atmosphere, superheating the electrons that make up the ionosphere. This will cause them to disperse, effectively punching a hole in the ionosphere.
But after you turn the instrument off, this thing kind of moves around and it gets replenished. And within a few minutes, it's back to where you can't even detect that there's a hole anymore.
The Air Force says that manipulating the ionosphere and studying the effect will allow them to improve the efficiency of communications, navigation, and surveillance systems. But researchers outside the military see HARP as a high-tech weapon with global implications.
The way I see HARP as it is right now, it is a premier, top-notch, high-energy radio physics experiment, and it has definite military applications.
Journalist Mark Farmer lives in Alaska and has written about the potential impact of HARP for both Jane's Defense Weekly and Popular Science magazine. He believes that HARP will be used to take giant X-rays of Earth.
Earth-penetrating tomography is a technique using extremely low-frequency radio waves. Today, in geophysical probing, scientists will use explosives or a machine that thumps the ground to produce these waves, but HARP will stimulate the auroral electrojet to make an antenna thousands of miles long that will emit these ELF waves.
Farmer's research indicates that the extremely low-frequency waves would be capable of penetrating several kilometers into the Earth, ferreting out nuclear storage facilities and other underground military installations.
This is producing surveillance systems able to detect stealthy cruise missiles and aircraft. These are systems that will enable us to communicate at higher data rates and at greater distances with our ballistic missile submarines.
While the Air Force insists HARP is not an offensive weapon and is necessary for continuing national security, Alaska native Nick Begich proposes a different scenario in this new book.
The things that we found in other Air Force documents, one in particular was a document put together in '82. The document was called Low Intensity Conflict in Modern Technology, with a foreword by none other than Newt Gingrich. One section spoke about using radio frequency radiation transmitters for disrupting human thinking, for basically debilitating troops invisibly by being able to bombard them with radio frequency that was tuned to just the right frequency, just the right waveform, so as to totally disrupt their mental process and basically debilitate those troops.
Because of HARP's potential to disrupt the Earth's magnetic field, many observers are concerned that it will damage the biomagnetic sensors that migratory animals like salmon and birds depend upon.
Anything that HARP can do to the magnetic field is orders of magnitude smaller than the natural variations of the Earth's field. So I would have to say, no, there's nothing Nothing we can do to affect the salmon.
But what generates the most concern by far is HAARP's ability to tamper with and punch holes in the ionosphere.
The thing that one of the Air Force documents points out is that they want to use this heater to create enough energy in the ionosphere to get a runaway effect up to the next stabilizing level, whatever that might be.
It's precisely whatever that might be that worries Dr. Patrick Flanagan, a physicist who believes the ionosphere is extremely fragile.
The ionosphere is a chaotic system that is on the edge of instability. So the trigger point for HAARP would be that energy and that frequency which throws the ionosphere into chaos.
So if you're like me and you believe that the Earth is a flat, multidimensional simulation that's being projected on a flat plane of inertia via toroidal fields and hyperboloids, then you'll also believe that there is a dome/firmament above us at the very least, right? And then possibly below us as well. But I've shared a lot of this information too, from like even like the Bible and the Quran and like scientific stuff and like rockets that have hit and bounced off and look like water splat, like a speedboat going through water, and then independent researchers putting up these rockets. And anyway, there's just a lot to unpack with that. So if these laser beams or like these frequencies or whatever you want to call it are hitting our dome, like with like high heat, you know what I mean? Like they could be messing with like the fields, like the toroidal fields, like these magnetic fields, whatever you want to call it. And if you do that, this can cause like the water from above to come down, like in certain areas, right, and cause like floods, which has happened before in the past. Right now, my dog is distracting me as well, so I'm gonna have to end it soon and see what he's crying about. But so yeah, like that's why HAARP like terrifies me. And actually, no, I'm not gonna leave this because he stopped now. Maybe he's just complaining, but I'll leave this run and then I'll just give you what Dutch Sense shares about HAARP and directed energy weapon systems and how HAARP is using them, and he shows like very interesting information on that.
In other words, it would be that point which throws it over the edge.
For example, it is believed that a hole in the Earth's ozone layer has caused an increase in infrared radiation, contributing to the melting of the polar ice caps and forcing New Zealand children to wear protective clothing to school. Flanagan and others believe the potential danger from a hole in the ionosphere is much greater.
It could create a change in the...
So I'll stop sharing that. Let's see how much I'm in. I'm over an hour in. Let's see here. It's from Rumble. This was 2011, August 26th. And shared, posted 2
Dare I
weeks
say
ago.
one of the best ones that has ever shown up. Unfortunately,
I'll back it up. Sorry about that.
PM Central Time on Friday, August 26th, 2011. And we're seeing a gigantic HAARP ring signature appear inside of the hurricane itself as it's coming ashore. Again, it's a giant, very intense HAARP ring return. And let me just go ahead and hit play on this. You can watch it go.
Oh, it's not playing. Try to refresh.
Just go. I'll just wait for it.
It's just
There
checking
you
my
go. It
dog.
appears for 2 to 3 frames, and it actually Looks like it's coming out of Raleigh itself with a background flash to the west. So we'll just go ahead and make that. There you go, guys. I mean, that is a huge background flash. I'll tell you what, I'm going to pause it up and we're going to open it up on multiple systems. So 1 second. Okay, so what I did was I came over here to multiple systems and we're going to go ahead and look at this one first. You see a massive flash and it gets right up into the white, into the pink. This is definitely what we call flash radar. It shows up at the time of hurricanes and very severe weather that they're trying to mitigate. So you got a massive flash on that system. Let's go ahead and look at it on College of DuPage. And just wait for it here. Okay, there was a white. And then that. Okay, let's go ahead and look at it on one more system here. Let's see, we'll go to 3D radar and see what that shows, if it shows anything at all. All right, and we're going to want to look right here. Okay, well, you don't see anything on 3D radar yet, but that takes a shot, I think, every 15 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and pause it up here really quick, and we're going to go to AccuWeather and see what it shows. Okay, and here we are on AccuWeather Professional, and you're going to see a bright white flash here in a second. There you go. And just so you know, bright white shows all the way up here at the very top beyond severe. So that is a high frequency return, and it's most definite coming out of Raleigh, North Carolina. Let's go ahead and put it on snow, ice, regular radar, see if that makes a difference in the image. And again, let's come back here to IntelliCast and take a look at it. Let me back it out so you can get the idea of the size. And this is your typical harp ring. So it's a very defined edge, excited at the outermost edge, hollow in the middle. And this is either a mitigation ring or this is going to stimulate further development on down the road in the next 24 to 48 hours. Usually that's what this does. So you can expect severe weather here at Raleigh 48 hours from now. Okay. And let's just go ahead and look on IntelliCast one time here and see what we can see. 1 second while this loads. Okay. And now that it's loaded, we'll just go ahead and there you go. A very intense white return with a background red flash throughout the entire storm. One more time. White flash.
Terrifying. So yeah, if they have that capability even from like over 10 years ago, it's definitely more advanced now. I'm just going to share the screen and show you some more stuff from Dutch Sense. Let's see here. Sometimes no. Where is it? I don't know why I'm not able to see that, sorry. Okay. So this is from Dutch Sensei. U.S. military exposed by weather satellites preparing for mass deployment, ? And let's see here. So this was from even comments from 15 weeks ago. So May 22nd, 2023.
And it's giving away positions, communicate right there. Okay. People try to tell me this was a missing panel, a stitching error from satellite or whatever. No. See this right here? This is from 2020. And this is beaming down into the middle of Tyndall Air Force Base. And this is where people told me it was chance and coincidence and that it was a stitching error. And this is years ago now, 3 years ago. going down into Tyndall Air Force Base. Got a whole video on it.
So the date, 10/9/2020, directed energy weapons do caught beaming at Tyndall Air
We
Force.
also caught this going down, something like this going into the fires out in California. The reason I'm showing this going into Tyndall Air Force Base, and you guys can go watch this video from 2020, is because this one, let's go zoom in on it. Let's go zoom in on it. So it's not a stitching error. Boom. Wow. Way bigger. Where's it beaming down to? Well, let's go look and see what is at the center of where the beam is going or coming from. It's down here in Louisiana. Right here, right across. Here's New Orleans, and here's Slidell. Let's just make sure that we're matching that up right. That's right. You can see it, and maybe I could even zoom in closer. It's possible, maybe. Yeah, okay. There it is. It's coming from the north side of the bay. Why does that matter? Well, let's go right up here, right across the bridge, up here the north side, and see what's there. Well, it looks like we've got a few subdivisions. And what else do we have? A National Guard training center. National Guard training. We got the National Guard training going on out here. I'm not going to show the exact location. You guys are welcome to look it up if you need to. If you're in the military, you know what I'm talking about. You've got your big National Guard training going on out here. Okay. So right next to the Marsh National Wildlife Refuge, right? Again, this is not up for debate. So if you know about the National Guard training that's down here, right here on the north side, and guess what else is right here on the north side? The NEXRAD radar station is also right next to it. So this is a big deal because this is multiple times now where I'm catching on Weather Satellite Live a beam that's coming from or going to one of our military places, and it gives away the location. It gives away location on the ground and up in the sky or in space. So you have to look at this three-dimensionally now because we're looking down from above. And so this would be a low Earth orbit satellite or airplane that beams down or they beam up too. And this is a giant wide disturbance that's picked up on the infrared. Infrared now. Let's look at long wave infrared and see how it shows up on long wave infrared. By the way, doesn't show up on long wave infrared. Instead, this gets me into the second part of this video. A second beam shows up coming from the same relative location, but it's beaming down to the other NEXRAD radar station over in western Louisiana. And we can go look at the radar stations to go compare on location.
So yeah, I highly recommend people take a look at Dutch Sensei. He's on YouTube and on Rumble and on BitChute and on Discord likely and on Odyssey most likely as well. And someone that is like he looks at this stuff and clearly is able to do like a lot of like assessments and research and stuff like that and show like government funded and you know what I mean, like websites and stuff like that to share this information. And so I will. Other stuff that I was going to talk about. I think that's good for now because I'm already well over an hour in. So I will leave it at that. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful day.